Across a relatively small stretch of southern Europe lies a country where some of the world's most recognizable destinations sit only a few hours apart. What makes them remarkable is not just their beauty, but the very different stories behind them. A single trip can move from ancient streets that have been walked for 2,000 years, to coastal roads carved into cliffs, to islands that once hosted emperors and traders from far beyond the Mediterranean. Many places here became famous because they show their history so openly. Cities like Rome and Florence grew over long periods, layer after layer, creating dense centers filled with architecture from different eras. Hill towns developed for protection, forming tight networks of walls, towers, and stone houses. Port cities expanded through trade. Shaped by the goods and cultures that arrived from across the sea. Even quiet fishing villages reveal how people adapted to geography when land was scarce and the sea was the main route outward. These destinations each offer their own way into Italy's past and present. Some stand at the center of major historical events. Others reflect local traditions that survived for centuries. Seen together, they show how varied travel here can be and how much of the story is still visible in the streets, coastlines, and landscapes explored today. San Gimignano. On a ridge above the Tuscan countryside stands San Gimignano, a town whose skyline is defined by medieval stone towers. During the Middle Ages, this settlement sat along the Via Francia, the main route linking northern Europe with Rome. Trade and pilgrimage brought wealth, and influential families built tower houses, both as residences and as symbols of status. More than 70 once stood. 14 remain today. The historic center preserves its original street plan. Piazza della Isterna, once the commercial heart, still connects narrow lanes lined with brick and stone facades. Nearby, the Clayata Church contains fresco cycles created between the 14th and 15th centuries, illustrating Old and New Testament scenes in vivid narrative detail. San Gimignano's surroundings contribute to its identity. Vineyards on the surrounding hills have produced Vernacano, a dry white wine since the Middle Ages. Visitors can trace the town's agricultural history through small cellars and cooperatives scattered around the outskirts. Despite its modest size, San Gimignano illustrates how a medieval community functioned in practical terms. Fortified walls, communal wells, market squares, and houses adapted to steep terrain. The scale has changed little, allowing the structure of the town to be understood almost exactly as it was centuries ago. Capri. Rising from the Bay of Naples, the island of Capri has been shaped by its cliffs, caves, and sheltered anchorages. Its appeal predates modern tourism. In the 1st century CE, Emperor Tiberius relocated here and governed the Roman Empire from a network of villas built on the island's eastern heights. The remains of Villa Jovis with its terraces and cisterns still occupy the rocky promontory above the sea. Capri's coastline is marked by limestone formations sculpted by wind and waves. The best known is the Blue Grotto, a sea cave where reflected sunlight illuminates the water from below. Boat routes circle the island, passing arches, narrow inlets, and the Ferroni sea stacks. 2 main settlements share the island. Capri town lies near the central saddle with narrow lanes, small squares, and terrace gardens. Anna Capri sits higher on the western side, accessed by a steep road or footpaths, and offers views toward the Gulf of Naples from Monte Solaro. The island's vegetation includes citrus groves, stone pines, and Mediterranean scrubland, shaped by both climate and centuries of cultivation. Capri's character results from this combination of geology, Roman heritage, and compact settlements adapted to steep terrain. Turin. At the edge of the Alps in northwest Italy lies Turin, a city planned with clarity and built across centuries of political change. It served as the capital of the Duchy of Savoy, later of the Kingdom of Sardinia, and briefly the first capital of a unified Italy. That history is visible in its broad avenues, geometric grid, and long colonnades designed for orderly movement across the city. The central district is anchored by Piazza Castello, surrounded by palaces and administrative buildings once used by the Savoy dynasty. The Royal Palace Palazzo Madama and the arcaded Via Po form a sequence of civic spaces leading toward the river. Turin is also known for its museums. The Mole Antonellana, originally intended as a synagogue, houses the National Museum of Cinema. The Egyptian Museum contains one of the most extensive collections of Egyptian artifacts outside Egypt, the result of 19th century archaeological missions supported by the Savoy court. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Turin became a major industrial centre, especially for automotive manufacturing. The Lingotto complex, once Fiat's main factory, has since been repurposed for cultural and commercial use. Today, the city blends royal architecture, industrial heritage, and a strong academic presence within a consistently structured urban framework. Orvieto, built on a plateau of volcanic rock. Orvieto overlooks the Umbrian countryside from nearly 300 meters above sea level. The Etruscans first settled here, carving wells and tunnels into the soft tufa music stone. Those passages still exist beneath the town, forming a complex underground world of cisterns, music quarries, and storage chambers. The medieval streets above remain compact and walkable. The centerpiece is the Duomo, a cathedral begun in 1290 and completed over 3 centuries. Its black and white stone facade covered in mosaics and bas-reliefs stands among the finest examples, music of Italian Gothic design. Inside fresco by Luca Signorelli, music, depict the Last Judgment with striking realism. A study later referenced by Michelangelo. Small workshops music line Orvieto's lanes, producing ceramics and local crafts, while restaurants music serve traditional dishes like umbricelli pasta and pigeon cooked in red wine. The town's white wine Orvieto Classicalico has been made here since the Middle Ages, its crisp flavor shaped by volcanic soil. From the walls, music the view extends over the valley of the Paglia River, framed by vineyards and olive groves. Orvieto feels entirely self-contained, a city built for music, defense, faith, and community, balanced perfectly between music, sky, and stone. Portofino along the Ligurian coast. Portofino occupies a narrow crescent of land between steep green hills and a sheltered bay. Its history began as a small harbour used by fishermen and traders navigating the Gulf of Tigullio. Over time, the same natural protection that served their boats made Portofino a haven for travellers and artists, drawn by its scale and calm. The waterfront houses painted in soft ochres and reds frame a semicircular piazza where daily life centres around the sea. Above the town, the trail to Castello Brown climbs through terrace gardens to a fort once used to guard the coastline. From there, the entire curve of the Ligurian shore is visible with the Alps faint in the distance. A network of walking paths leads into the Portofino Regional Park. Pine forests, olive groves, and steep cliffs that drop to coves like San Frutuoso, where a Benedictine abbey faces the water. Although the village covers only a few streets, it retains the feel of a working harbour. Fishing boats still unload in the early morning, and evenings end quietly, the sea reflecting the same light that has drawn visitors here for generations. Bologna. In the centre of Emilia-Romagna, Bologna is defined by its long arcades or porticos which stretch for nearly 40 kilometres. These covered walkways link every part of the city, sheltering markets, cafes, and daily life from rain and sun alike. The city has ancient roots. It was a major Roman settlement, then a medieval commune, and later an intellectual capital. Its university, founded in 1088, is still active and considered the oldest in the Western world. The constant flow of students keeps Bologna lively, balancing history with a youthful energy. The medieval skyline was once filled with towers built by competing families. Only a few remain, including the Asinelli and Garisenda, which lean noticeably above Piazza d'Ora Ravenana. The main square, Piazza Maggiore, is framed by civic buildings and the massive Basilica of San Petronio, still unfinished but monumental in scale. Bologna is widely regarded as the culinary heart of Italy. Its cuisine is straightforward and rooted in craft. Fresh egg pasta, cured meats, and rich ragu. Markets like the Quadrilatero still operate much as they did centuries ago, filled with conversation, colour, and the scent of cooking that defines the city's rhythm. The Dolomites, stretching across northern Italy. The Dolomites form a mountain range unlike any other in Europe. Their pale limestone cliffs rise sharply from forested valleys, and their shapes, jagged spires, plateaus, and towers, were formed by ancient coral reefs lifted by geological shifts. The region's light is part of its identity. At sunrise and sunset, the peaks glow pink and orange in a phenomenon known as enroadera, caused by the mineral composition of the rock. The Dolomites mark a cultural border as well as a geological one. Italian, German, and Latin are all spoken here, and the architecture reflects that mix. Wooden chalets, onion dome churches, and mountain lodges serving both pasta and strudel. These mountains were also a battleground during World War I. Remnants of trenches, tunnels, and fortifications remain high on the ridges, now preserved as hiking routes and open-air museums. Today, the area supports small communities through tourism, farming, and crafts. In summer, high hikers cross alpine meadows dotted with wildflowers. In winter, the same slopes become world-class ski runs. The Dolomites combine natural spectacle with human resilience, where people and landscape have adapted to each other for centuries. Genoa. Wedged between the mountains and the Ligurian Sea, Genoa developed vertically. Streets rise steeply from the harbour into a maze of narrow alleys known as cugi, where shops, workshops, and small piazzas overlap like layers of history. For centuries, Genoa was a maritime republic and one of the Mediterranean's most powerful ports. Its merchant families built grand palaces along the Strade Nuove, the Palazzi de Roli, with marble staircases, frescoed halls, and facades that still reflect its wealth. The harbour has evolved, but never lost purpose. Fishing boats and ferries operate beside container terminals and shipyards. Along the waterfront, modern redevelopment led by architect Renzo Piano has opened the area to the public. With promenades, a maritime museum, and the city's famous aquarium. Inland, the atmosphere shifts quickly. Narrow alleys carry the scent of basil, garlic, and olive oil, reminders that pesto originated here. Cafes and markets fill the medieval core where the sound of church bells competes with scooters echoing off stone walls. Genoa is dense, working, and complex. A city that still faces the sea as it always has, built for function before beauty and stronger for it. Verona, best known as the setting for Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet. Yet, Verona is a picturesque city filled with Roman ruins, Renaissance palaces, and medieval buildings. Located between Milan and Venice in northern Italy, the city receives a bit less attention from travelers than its more celebrated neighbors, but not for lack of attractions. Verona offers visitors the chance to enjoy all of the charms of an ancient Italian city without constantly battling crowds. Although the first stop for many visitors, the first stop is Juliet's house with its recently added balcony. It's important to remember that Romeo and Juliet were characters from fiction, not reality. Nevertheless, the house and its courtyard attract lovers from all over the world who come to reenact the balcony scene in person. Of the city's historical sites, the Grand Roman Amphitheatre is the most famous, the third largest Roman arena in the world. The first-century amphitheatre is remarkably well preserved. Plays are still performed in the 25,000-seat venue. Among the best representations of the Renaissance period is the Duomo with its recently restored frescoes and marble interiors. At dusk, Verona's star attraction is the Via Mazzini, a broad thoroughfare where locals take their evening stroll or la passeggiata. The parade ends in the Piazza delle Erbe, where visitors can relax at a sidewalk cafe to enjoy an aperitivo or shop for mementos of their trip to the city of star-crossed lovers. Matera, home to some of the most famous cave dwellings in the world. The fascinating city of Matera is perched atop a rocky outcrop right in the south of Italy. Each year, thousands of tourists come to explore all the enchanting old saui that are carved into the mountainside. Believed to be among the very first human settlements in the country, its captivating caves have been used since around 7000 BC. Remarkably well preserved, its innumerable houses and churches are hewn out of large limestone cliffs bordering its old town. Connecting them all together are steep staircases and narrow winding streets. Wandering about its extensive system of caves is an unforgettable experience with fantastic viewpoints and photo stops popping up all the time. While some dwellings still house cafes, businesses, and even families, most are now abandoned. One of southern Italy's top tourist attractions, Matera and its many sashi really are unique to explore. Sardinia. Across the Tyrrhenian Sea from the Italian mainland, Sardinia covers more than 24,000 square km of mountains, plains, and coast. Its interior remains sparsely populated. While the coastline alternates between long beaches, coves, and granite cliffs, the island's earliest known culture left behind thousands music of stone towers called nuraghi, built during the Bronze Age. They still stand music across the landscape, silent markers of a society that predates written history. Over the centuries, Sardinia absorbed music influences from Phoenician traders, Carthaginians, Romans, and later Spanish music rule. Each era left its traces in language, architecture, and food. Cagliari, the capital, overlooks the southern harbour with an old town of ramparts and narrow streets. In the north, the Costa Smeralda became famous for its clear water and rugged coves. But beyond the resorts, life follows a slower rhythm. Inland villages, music preserve pastoral traditions, producing pecorino cheese, weaving textiles, and celebrating seasonal festivals with music and masks. The Sardinian language is still widely spoken, reflecting the island's strong sense of music independence within Italy's borders. Alberobello. In the hills of Puglia, Alberobello is instantly recognizable for its clusters of truly circular houses built from local limestone without mortar. The technique dates back to the 14th century and was a practical response to both the region's geology and its tax system, which favored easily dismantled structures. Each trullo has thick whitewashed walls and a conical roof made of overlapping grey stone slabs. The design keeps interiors cool in summer and retains warmth in winter. Some roofs are marked with painted symbols of faith or family, adding personal touches to an otherwise uniform form. The town developed from small rural settlements, and many truly are still used as homes, workshops, or small shops. The streets curve naturally with the landscape, giving Alberobello an organic, almost accidental layout. Inside, the rooms are simple and quiet, often built around a central hearth. Together, these buildings form a landscape that demonstrates both necessity and skill. Architecture created from what was available, shaped by centuries of repetition rather than design. Icy set on the slopes of Mount Sububasio in Umbria. Icy developed around a Roman settlement whose remains are still visible beneath the medieval streets. The town later became closely linked to the life of St. Francis, born here in the late 12th century. His legacy shaped Icy's architecture, economy, and religious significance for centuries. The Basilica of San Francesco, built after his death, consists of two churches, an upper and a lower, constructed directly into the hillside. Inside fresco by Giotto Cimabue and other early Renaissance painters depict episodes from the life of Francis and biblical scenes, forming one of the most important narrative cycles in Italian art. Beyond the basilica, Icey retains a compact medieval centre. Stone houses line narrow streets leading to the main square, Piazza del Cune, where a Roman temple facade still stands beside the town hall. The Rocca Maggiore fortress sits at the top of the ridge, offering wide views across the Umbrian Valley. Pilgrims, scholars and travellers continue to visit Icey, not only for religious history, but for its intact urban layout, where Roman foundations, medieval structures, and quiet daily routines coexist within a small, well-preserved hillside town. Lake Garda. At the foothills of the Alps, Lake Garda stretches over 50 kilometers from north to south, creating Italy's largest freshwater lake. Its geography changes noticeably along its length. The northern end is narrow and surrounded by steep cliffs, while the southern end opens into a wide basin bordered by rolling hills. Towns along the shore developed according to this terrain. Riva del Garda and Torblet in the north reflect an alpine character with stone fortifications and mountain paths rising directly from the lakefront. Farther south, places like Syrian sit on low peninsulas where Roman villas, medieval fortresses, and thermal springs overlap in close quarters. The lake has long supported agriculture, especially olives, lemons, and vineyards that benefit from the mild climate. Ferries connect the towns, making travel across the lake as common as travel around it. The surrounding mountains offer trails. Panoramic roads, and remnants of First World War defences, while the shoreline provides harbours, promontories, and small beaches. Garda's appeal comes from its scale and variety. Alpine landscapes at one end, Mediterranean vegetation at the other, and a chain of towns that reflect centuries of commerce, defence, and seasonal life linked by the water. Lecce. On the Cento Peninsula in southern Puglia, Lecce is known for its distinctive Baroque architecture carved from pale local limestone. The stone's softness allowed craftsmen in the 17th and 18th centuries to create intricate facades, balconies, and sculptures that give the city a recognizable visual identity. The historic centre follows a layout formed over many eras. Roman remains include an amphitheatre partially excavated in Piazza Sant'Unzo, while medieval churches stand beside palaces built during Spanish rule. The Basilica of Santa Croce is the best example of Lecce's ornate style. Its facade packed with columns, capitals, and symbolic reliefs, yet structured with clear symmetry. Lecce's streets are narrow and often shaded, opening suddenly onto squares framed by civic buildings, markets, and cafes. Local workshops continue traditions in papier-mâché sculpture and stone carving, crafts that developed when religious processions and monastery commissions formed a major part of the city's economy. The surrounding countryside produces olive oil, wine, and wheat, and the coastal towns of Cento lie within easy reach. Lecce functions as the cultural hub of the peninsula, balancing a historic core with universities, theatres, and festivals that keep it active throughout the year. Milan, in northern Italy's Lombardy region. Milan is a major centre of finance, design, and industry, built on a Roman grid that still shapes much of the city's structure. Its long history includes periods under the Visconti and Sforza families, Spanish rule, and Napoleonic administration, each leaving architectural and administrative traces. At the city's heart stands the Duomo, one of the largest Gothic cathedrals in Europe. Its forest of spires and statues rises above a broad marble facade. Nearby, the gallery of Vittorio Emanuele II connects the cathedral square to the opera house La Scala, through a 19th century iron and glass arcade. The Castello Forzesco, once a fortress and ducal residence, now houses museums and opens towards Scion Park, Milan's main green space. Beyond the historic centre, the city expanded rapidly in the 20th century, leaving districts characterized by rationalist architecture, industrial sites, and later modern redevelopment. The Porta Nuova area, with its contemporary towers and public squares, reflects Milan's recent growth. Fashion, publishing, manufacturing, and design drive the economy, while universities and cultural institutions attract students and researchers from around the world. Milan's identity comes from this combination of dense history and continuous reinvention within a clearly defined urban framework. Hey Naples! Along the curve of the Bay of Naples stretches one of Europe's oldest continuously inhabited cities. Its origins date to Greek settlers who founded Neapolis in the 5th century BC. The historic centre still follows the ancient grid with narrow east-west streets known as deumani, intersected by north-south alleys. Layers of architecture show the city's long history. Roman ruins beneath churches, medieval monasteries beside Baroque facades, and 18th century palaces built during Bourbon rule. The National Archaeological Museum holds mosaics, sculptures, and household objects from Pompeii and Herculaneum, providing context for the daily life of the region in antiquity. Castel Nuovo and Castel d'Ovo guard the waterfront, while the hilltop district of Vomero rises above the port, offering views toward Mount Vuvius. Ficula railways link the hills with the lower city, providing access to residential neighborhoods and the Certosa de San Martino, a former monastery with extensive collections. Naples is also shaped by its volcanic environment. The Campi Flegrei to the west and Vuvius to the east influence both soil and urban development. Markets, workshops, and small storefronts line much of the old centre, illustrating a city where commerce and daily routines remain closely tied to the street. Pompeii. At the foot of Mount Vuvius lie the remains of Pompeii, a Roman city preserved by the eruption of the volcano in the year 79. Much of the town was buried beneath ash and pumice, sealing streets and buildings in the middle of ordinary activity. When excavations began many centuries later, they revealed an unusually complete picture of daily life in the early Roman Empire. The city was laid out on a regular grid. Stone streets showed deep grooves from cartwheels, and music-raised stepping stones allowed pedestrians to cross when water flowed through the roadway. Houses ranged from simple rooms used by laborers to large residences arranged around open courtyards. Fresco, mosaics, and painted walls still mark many interiors. Music, showing scenes from mythology, landscapes, and decorative patterns. Public music life centered on the Forum, a large open space surrounded by temples and administrative buildings. Nearby stood the Basilica, used for legal and commercial affairs. Entertainment was provided by the amphitheatre at the edge of town and by a large theatre adapted for music, and drama. Shops, bakeries, workshops for dyeing and cleaning textiles, music, and small counter-service taverns lined many streets. Inscriptions scratched onto walls record advertisements, political messages, and everyday remarks. The sudden destruction of the city preserved these traces in extraordinary detail, offering a direct view of Roman society rarely found elsewhere. Florence, the capital of Tuscany. Florence is often described as a colossal outdoor museum because of its massive art and architectural treasures. Internationally renowned as the birthplace of Italian Renaissance, Florence is also credited with propagating many artists, inventors, writers, scientists, explorers. It's also credited with inventing opera and the florin currency, which lifted Europe from the Dark Ages. Additionally, Florence is known as the home of the wealthy and powerful Medici dynasty that produced several kings and popes. That legacy impacted the world culturally, economically, politically. Florence's hoard of art masterpieces are found all over the city, contained within the large numbers of museums. Stunning churches like the domed Santa Maria del Fiore, internationally esteemed art galleries like the Uffizi, Pitti Palace, the Piazza della Signoria, the main square, is home to beautiful buildings and world-famous sculptures like Cellini's Perseus with the head of Medusa, Ammoniati's Fountain of Neptune, Michelangelo's Statue of David. Walking is the best way to see the major sites in the city centre. Some of the best places to walk include the Ponte Vecchio, a beautiful bridge spanning the Arno River, and featuring a number of jewellery shops. Florence's markets are another good place to spend some time before heading back to your accommodation. The San Lorenzo markets are among the most popular, where tourists can find an array of locally grown foods and handcrafted goods. Pisa, along the Arno River, in the northwestern region of Tuscany. The city still bears striking remnants of its medieval commercial golden age. The Leaning Tower is a must-see, but if you visit just to photograph it, you're seeing one tree and missing the whole forest. Pisa is so much more than the tower. Surrounding it is the Campo dei Miracoli, the Field of Miracles. This plaza houses magnificent Renaissance landmarks, including the Duomo Cathedral, the Baptistery, the Camposanto Monument, rich marble facades and intricate stone detail, intricate sculptures, colourful frescoes, and centuries-old relics. Sprinkled throughout the plaza are shops selling souvenirs and bakeries offering tasty biscotti. Beyond the Field of Miracles, the Arno River often leaves a lasting impression. Pisa is split by the river, linked by charming bridges, like the Ponte di Mezzo. The riverbanks are lined with quaint residential houses, grand historic buildings, and stretches of riverside greenery. With 60,000 students, the University of Pisa fills the city with youth and energy. Venice built across more than 100 small islands in a shallow lagoon. Venice developed as a community protected by water rather than walls. Its layout reflects the constraints of its setting: narrow calli, small squares and canals that function as primary routes. The Grand Canal traces a reverse S shape through the city, lined with palaces constructed between the 13th and 18th centuries. Their facades combine Byzantine elements, Gothic elements, and Renaissance elements, shaped by centuries of maritime contact with the Eastern Mediterranean. At the political and ceremonial heart stands Piazza San Marco, bordered by the Basilica, the Doge's Palace, and arcaded government buildings. Each structure documents Venice's role as a former maritime republic, whose economy depended on trade routes extending from the Adriatic to the Levant. The lagoon itself remains essential to understanding the city. It acts as both a barrier and a resource. Shaped by tides, mudflats, and shallow channels, traditional boatyards still build and repair vessels adapted to these conditions. Beyond the historic centre, the islands of Murano, Burano, and Torcello show different stages of Venetian development. From early settlement patterns to specialized crafts such as glassmaking and lacework, Venice's form is inseparable from the lagoon that surrounds it, and its architecture reflects centuries of adaptation to water and limited land. Amalfi Coast. The Amalfi Coast runs along a steep stretch of the Sorrento Peninsula, where the Laetari Mountains meet the Tyrrhenian Sea. Settlements developed on narrow terraces carved into the cliffs, connected historically by stairways and mule paths rather than continuous roads. Amalfi, once a powerful maritime republic, still contains traces of its former influence. The cathedral, with its striped facade and Arab-Norman details, overlooks a dense network of alleys shaped by centuries of trade. Nearby, Trani, one of the smallest municipalities in Italy, is built around a single central piazza sheltered by surrounding rock formations. Farther along the coast, Ravello occupies a high plateau with views toward the sea. Its villas, originally residences of merchant families, include terrace gardens that follow the contours of the hillside. Positano, arranged vertically on steep slopes, shows how limited land influenced construction patterns, narrow lanes, stacked houses, and stepped paths. Agriculture remains present despite the terrain. Lemon groves, vineyards, and small vegetable plots occupy terraces supported by dry stone walls. The Amalfi Coast's form is dictated by geology, and each town reflects a different way of adapting daily life to a landscape of cliffs, valleys, and limited space. Lake Como. Nestled in the heart of Italy's Lombardy region, Lake Como is a very popular destination, natural beauty, Italian charm, a touch of luxury. The lake reaches more than 400 meters in depth, surrounded by steep slopes that leave little flat land for construction. As a result, most towns developed in narrow strips along the shoreline, connected historically by boats rather than roads. Como at the southwestern tip remains the largest center medieval core cathedral Roman street grid. Following the lakeshore northward, Cannobio, Tramezzo, Bellagio appear at intervals where the terrain allows terraces, docks, gardens. Many of the villas that define the landscape were built between the 17th–19th centuries by Milan families seeking summer residences. Their architecture varies from neoclassical to eclectic styles, often accompanied by formal gardens adapted to steep terrain. The northern arm of the lake narrows toward the town of Collico, where alpine winds create conditions favorable for sailing. The surrounding mountains are crossed by paths used for centuries by merchant shepherds, now connecting villages to panoramic viewpoints. Lake Como's character is shaped primarily by its geography, deep water-limited space, and steep ridges that dictate how towns and routes unfold along the shoreline. Sicily, the largest island in the Mediterranean. Sicily lies just across from the southern tip of Italy, on the narrow Strait of Messina. Due to its location, it has long acted as a crossroads, so is very distinct from the rest of the country, in terms of its history, culture, and cuisine. This is best exemplified by Palermo, Sicily's capital and largest city, which was remarkably founded more than 2,700 years ago. Since then, it has been ruled by everyone from the Phoenicians and Romans to the Arabs and Normans, with each civilization leaving behind artistic and architectural treasures and culinary influences. A wealth of important archaeological sites lies scattered around the island. These now make for some of Sicily's most popular tourist attractions. The impressive ruins of the ancient theatre of Taormina, the age-old edifices in the Valley of the Temples, date to the ancient Greeks. Others, such as the mountaintop castles of Eris, were built in medieval times. Renowned for its rugged beauty, Sicily's rugged cliffs and secluded beaches are lined by sparkling waters, while fertile farmland and mountains dot its interior. Towering over everything is Mount Etna, one of the world's most active volcanoes, and the highest peak in Italy, south of the Alps, Rome. Across the hills and the curve of the Tiber River stretches Rome, a city where more than 2 millennia of buildings still share the same streets. Walking through the center, it becomes clear that ancient Rome was not a distant world, but the foundation of everything that followed. The Forum sits in a broad, shallow valley, its columns and arches marking the heart of the old republic. A short distance away, the Colosseum rises like a stone skeleton, its corridors still showing how crowds once moved to their seats. Early Christian basilicas stand on reused Roman walls, some built directly above older temples. Narrow medieval lanes lead unexpectedly to wide Renaissance squares commissioned by powerful popes intent on reshaping the city. Fountains, obelisks, palaces reflect those periods of renewal when Rome became a center of culture, administration, and ceremony. On the west bank of the river, the Dome of St. Peter's dominates the skyline. The Vatican grew over centuries into a cluster of courtyards, galleries, archives that preserve a vast record of art and religion. Modern neighborhoods spread well beyond the ancient walls. Yet, the older districts remain active, not preserved in silence, but lived in every day. Rome's character comes from this constant overlap of eras. The city never replaced its past. It simply continued building around it. Hey, Siena. Established upon 3 hills in the heart of Tuscany, Siena offers tourists a step back into the Middle Ages, with its well-preserved historic center and medieval horse racing tradition. Famously known as Il Palio, formerly a wealthy city, the historic center of Siena is one of Italy's most beautiful. It still retains many stunning works of art and architecture. Siena's Piazza Dello is regarded as one of the finest medieval squares in Europe. This fan-shaped plaza is noted for its architectural treasures: Fountain of Joy, the Palazzo Pubblico, the Torre del Mangia. Another of Siena's architectural gems is its Duomo, a stunning black and white cathedral of Italian Romanesque design: marble floors, stained glass, sculptures, paintings, and carvings. The piazza is also a good place to relax, watch people, and enjoy the local delights of wine, coffee, pizza, focaccia, and gelato. Hosted twice every summer in the Piazza Dello, the Palio horse race draws huge annual crowds. This 700-year-old tradition involves representatives from 17 different districts, racing bareback on the cobblestone plaza. Siena is also home to one of Italy's oldest public universities, the University of Siena, widely recognized for its schools of medicine and law. Cinque Terre, 5 quaint fishing villages, blue, yellow, pink, all hug cliffsides that slope down to the sea. These villages and the surrounding green hills make up the Cinque Terre National Park, one of Italy's most popular tourist destinations. Located in the country's northwestern coastal region of Liguria, the villages of Cinque Terre feature some of the country's most beautiful landscapes that include wine terraces dating back to hundreds of years, meaning 5 lands: Rio Maggiore, Manarola, Vernazza, Monterosso, Corniglia. Rio boasts a medieval castle and the bustling main street of Via Colombo, while Manarola is filled with colorful boats, swimming holes, and caves. Surrounded by olive groves, Vernazza offers a lively nightlife scene. The beautiful beach of Monterossa is lined with floats, while slowly sloping vineyards adorn Corniglia. Rich in agriculture and fishing, the Cinque Terre villages are teeming in cafes and trattorias which serve locally grown wine, olives, cheeses, pasta, seafood, and homemade breads. Among its many gems, Cinque boasts a centuries-old complex of hiking paths that offers some of Italy's most stunning coastal views. The Blue Trail, also known as Trail Number 2, is a paved trail connecting all 5 of the villages and is suitable for all ages. Subscribe to True Path Travel for more travel adventures.